Also, I would guess that leftover behaviors from like the Trudeau folks that can be very frustrating for people who are negotiating.
Well, Doug Ford single-handedly reverses all of the negotiations that Mark Carney claims has been going on for the last 7 months. And Mark Carney is very nonchalant about the whole thing, doesn't seem to care at all. Welcome back to the Canadian Shield. My name is Sterling. Mark Carney got another liberal mandate out of the Canadian voter by claiming that Donald Trump was an existential threat, that the trade barriers that Donald Trump was putting up on Canada was not only an existential threat to our country, but a attack on our very way of life. Why would that have changed in the last 7 months? Why all of a sudden, now that you've gotten what you want, now that you've got the Canadian population thinking that they can wait 5, 10 more years for some kind of improvement that's never going to come? The Liberal government, anybody who's listening to me right now, is never going to provide any improvement because they do the best the way things are. So, and Mark Carney proves it because today when he was talking to the reporters as he took off to Asia in his gigantic jumbo jet that Canadians pay for, that Canadians fuel, that has engines in it taller than a full-grown man just cranking out the carbon. Mark Carney just said, it's no big deal. When the Americans feel like coming back to the table, well, we'll be here, no problem at all. On top of that, Doug Ford says that it's a big deal that he'll take the ads down once they've run on American television during the World Series. As you can imagine, there will be plenty of people watching the World Series. I'm not sure that they will be of the political ilk that Doug Ford hopes they are. Nonetheless, he plans on pulling the ad only after the first two games of the World Series, Friday night and Saturday night, being pumped into the American market. I don't know how it is that Major League Baseball permits that, and I am quite certain that those are going to be pretty expensive to run. In addition to that, I don't know why Doug Ford thinks that it's a smart idea to stick his nose into a Supreme Court decision. I can tell you that if Donald Trump was trying to do that in Canada, if Donald Trump was, say, sticking his nose into Bill C-69, I wonder then what Mark Carney and Doug Ford might have to say. Oh, they'd be pulling their hair out. They'd be losing their minds. Of course, now they don't want to play by the rules that they are expecting others to play by, which of course is why one of the trade negotiators, the head of the NEC, said that the Liberal government with their leftover Trudeau-era policies are being very, very difficult to talk to, and it's causing the Americans to negotiate separately with Mexico. All of this does not have anything to support Mark Carney's contention that we're in a trade war. It certainly doesn't support Mark Carney's contention or his campaign slogan that we were going to go in elbows up. It looks to me like Mark Carney should have removed anybody that's going in there with the poison of the Trudeau government. But he didn't do that. He allows those people to go in there, which makes you wonder, all of these things put together, is Mark Carney maybe trying to sabotage these trade talks? Is he hoping that Canadians will become desperate? Or is he hoping that Canadians will just become so destitute that they won't be able to stop him from his true goals? I don't know. It's speculation, but let's have a look at some of the facts. Before we get into it, I would encourage all of you to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share this channel with all of your socials. Okay, let's get into this. Let's begin with Mark Carney's statement from the airport, or lack thereof, and how he's told the reporters in the scrum that it didn't matter what Donald Trump was doing because he's going to go hammer out a trade deal with Asia.
We can't control the trade policy of the United States. We recognize that that policy has fundamentally changed from the policy in the 1980s, 1990s, 2000s. And it's a situation where the United States has tariffs against every one of their trading partners to different degrees. And
what a far cry from the campaign trail that we're hearing right there. It's no big deal. We can't do anything about it. So whatever. What a 180 degree difference from the campaign trail.
It's in that context that our officials, my colleagues, have been working with their American colleagues on detailed, constructive negotiations, discussions on specific transactions, specific sectors, steel, aluminum, and energy. And a lot of progress has been made. And
apparently not that much progress because A, you haven't signed a specific sector deal, and B, the jobs for those sectors that you just listed off are getting smaller and smaller by the day. Again, I would point out the difference between the campaign trail and even just a couple of weeks ago. Oh, we're going to make him sign a deal by the 30th of the month, blah, 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 blah. To now, we're getting closer, don't worry about it. Oh, yeah, people are worried about it, Mr. Carney. I mean, now it seems you're the only one who's not worried about it.
we stand ready to pick up on that progress and build on that progress when the Americans are ready to have those discussions, because it will be for the benefit of workers in the United States, workers in Canada, and families in both of our countries. Now, what we can control, absolutely, is how we build here at home. And that's the focus of Budget 2025, generational investment here in Canada.
I'm not even sure what that means, generational investment. We need immediate investment. We need immediate reversal. Not let's wait 25 more years while Mark Carney's investments get richer and richer with every passing minute, and you and I start to, beg him for the crickets or something to that effect. Now, before I move forward, I would just like to I would like to draw your attention to that SUV that's been running the entire time on the tarmac, and the noise you hear in the background, of course, is that airplane running on the tarmac. And how that full-grown bodyguard or RCMP officer that's walking is about waist height with the engine of that SUV, and that engine on the airplane would literally swallow him whole. How much carbon is that cranking out? And do you think Mark Carney cares? No, he doesn't want the Green Deal that he makes you think that he does. He just wants you to not have it so that him and his friends can take control of the country. Can try to get it so that you call him, King Carney or something to that effect, because he clearly is not practicing what he preaches. This gigantic jet running, look at the size of it. It's got engines on it so big that a full-grown RCMP officer could stand inside it if it was raining. It's bigger than an SUV. Let's remember that when you're out there, guys, telling yourself that you're going to glue yourself to the road and all the other silly, ridiculous moves that I hear coming out of the far left eco-mentalists. And the reality on the ground is what I want you to look at. I want you to understand that what you're being sold is a bill of goods, not a way of life.
And what we can also control, or at least heavily influence, is developing new partnerships and opportunities, including with the economic giants of Asia, which is the focus of this trip.
Economic giants. I thought we were a G7. G7 is supposed to be the economic giants, the top 7 economic giants of the world. How come it is that Asia is all of a sudden the economic giants? Is that how you justify making these trips away from the country and not worrying about what's going on domestically? Is that how you tell yourself that somehow you're going to create trade? Let me explain something to anybody out there who thinks that it's going to offset the trade with the United States of America. Let's ignore the numbers. Just ignore the fact that it's 80% of everything that we manufacture going south. And that right now there are plenty of people who are losing their jobs that will gladly join the Americans. They'll gladly sign 51. Let's just ignore all of that. We can put a product, we can manufacture a product in, I don't know, pick a northern city, say Edmonton. Edmonton's pretty far up there. Yellowknife, that's way up there. We can put that product on the back of a truck and we can drive it 24 hours a day, whatever it may be, whatever's, because you can drive it down so far and then you can switch the truck out for a different driver. But just assuming for the sake of argument that the truck is constantly moving. Under 24 hours, we can have that into the United States. Under 48 hours, that can be delivered to the destination, even if that destination is in Florida. It's easy to say that we can drive a product from the Yukon to Florida in under 48 hours. So now we can deliver that product down there in under 48 hours, indicating that the invoice can be served in 72 hours. Now, does that mean they're going to pay it that quickly? No. But they can absolutely put the bill in and say, okay, let's go ahead and pay me right away. By contrast, sending products from China down to, say, Malaysia, Well, it takes considerably longer and can go in considerably smaller proportions. And once it gets down there, now you're talking about dealing with how that gets off the boat, which is not anywhere near the same as getting it off the back of a truck. Many times when it comes off a boat, it only comes off the boat to go onto the back of a truck or into a gigantic pile on the dock until a crane comes along and puts it on the back of a truck. And then it gets delivered to the individual that may or may not be purchasing it. Then it gets delivered to the company that requested it. So you're talking about an enormous amount of delay between offering it up to the American market, the largest market on earth. The market in the United States of America is 3 times the Chinese market. There are, I think, 4, 5, and 6 of the G7 would need to quadruple their output to even tie the American market. Mr. Economics knows that, but he doesn't seem to want to be telling the Canadian population the reality on the ground. He thinks that by saying words like generational investment, you're going to sit tight and boil in the water like the frog, while he strips away all of your liberty and all of your economic power. I mean, that's how it looks, because 1 minute it's an existential threat, it's a trade war, it's this, it's that, it's the other thing, and now it's like, oh, I'm going to take my G7 country, and somehow the Chinese market is the economic powerhouse. The Asian market is the economic powerhouse. That's a weird thing to say. I mean, they might have a lot of people, but they don't have the economy. One of the reasons that Canada is a G7 country is because of our trade with the United States. And technically, under the Liberal government, we have slipped, 6 places. So we're not really a G7 country. We're not even in the top 10. We're still in the G20, so I suppose there's that. And there's nothing in this market that we're going to be offering to that market. They have very specific ways of doing things over there. Of course, what everybody wants to overlook is that the inexpensive labor is one of the reasons that we manufacture everything over there. Well, we'll talk about that in a different video, I suppose, and how that doesn't really mesh with the far left's policies of unions first and all the rest of that as well. However, this is just the beginning. This is just Mark Carney on the tarmac, all of a sudden trying to control the narrative that he's switched his position. No reporters are pushing back on him because he owns all the press. I mean, nobody ever asked themselves, how much stock does Brookfield have in, say, CTV, in Bell Media? That's an interesting question. I picked this up from the CBC. Ontario to pull ad that angered Trump on Monday, Ford says, after the weekend's World Series games. Now, Donald Trump says he terminated the trade talks because the Liberal government and Doug Ford are trying to influence the Supreme Court decision on the tariffs that are coming before the Supreme Court, because Donald Trump is using legislation to enact these tariffs. I can't see how the Supreme Court can go against it. He is, after all, the president of the country, and the security that he is, by utilizing these tariffs, he has already increased the security of the country and lowered the deficit by $600 billion. Inflation is the lowest it's been in nearly 10 years. So they have a strong case, is what I'm trying to say there. But Doug Ford, he says, no, it's not about that. I just want the American people to know that we're on their team. Yet when Donald Trump says, I've ended the negotiation, the trade talks, do you think the American worker is being impacted, or is it going to be impacting workers all the way from Quebec City right through to the rest of the country? Do you think that it's the Canadian worker, especially workers in Southern Ontario and Southern Quebec, that are going to be most heavily impacted by Doug Ford's decision to leave this ad running during the World Series? Arguably one of the most viewed events that's going to happen over the weekend, at the taxpayer of Ontario's expense. So ka-ching there. So it seems to me that Doug Ford is proving Donald Trump right. That Doug Ford is in fact trying to utilize this to influence something. If he cared about what was going on with the worker instead of just caring about how much he dislikes Donald Trump, then perhaps he would say to himself, listen, we need to get them back to the table. But I'll pull it on Monday means that Donald Trump might not come back to the table for a month. It's going to make for an interesting Christmas. Whereas if he pulled it right away, he could at least say to Donald Trump, listen, it was a bad move. Sorry about that. Let's talk it over. Come on, we'll have talks on Sundays. Of course, we can't do that now because Doug Ford isn't even planning on pulling it down until Monday. And Mark Carney, as you saw, doesn't seem to care. Doesn't even want to mention it. Just the economic powerhouse of Asia, apparently. It's funny because most of the Asian countries that I know of are desperate to do business with the Americans. They will open their markets wide to the Americans, even China. Yet Mark Carney doesn't seem to care. Doug Ford, he doesn't seem to care. I mean, you have to ask yourself, where's all the talk about the threats and the elbows up and the trade war and all the rest of that? So where's that now? Where's the evidence? Where's the proof in the pudding? That's just something I'm curious. I just think Canadians should be asking themselves, where is all of the actions that support the talk, the words that are coming out of these guys' mouth? It's almost like they had those words crafted by somebody whose whole entire skill set is to be written, is to be a writer, but they don't actually mean those words, and they don't really see any threat, and they don't really feel like Donald Trump's actions are a problem. All the while, they're making Canadians get angry at the person, at nobody, because it doesn't matter how you feel about Donald Trump. It's not going to give you a better job. It's not going to lower your rent. It's not going to lower your food prices. Mark Carney, Doug Ford, these guys could do that, but they're too preoccupied with making you preoccupied. I mean, that's how it looks to me. Let's listen to what the Americans have to say about these trade negotiations. So this is one of the American diplomats, or one of the Donald Trump's inner circle, that is going to be asked a question about the trade negotiations, on top of a couple of other things, but he spoke to the trade negotiations.
Can you start with the Canadian trade negotiations, where things stand?
Yeah, obviously the President Truth, something that reveals his frustration with the actions and postures of the Canadians through months of negotiations, and we'll see how it goes.
Is the president on Canada? Okay. You said the president was frustrated, but is this just a knee-jerk reaction?
I think the frustration has built up over time. I've been involved in some of these negotiations, and the Canadians have been very difficult to negotiate with. And you look at all the countries around the world that we've made deals with, and the fact that we're now negotiating with Mexico separately reveals that it's not just about one ad, that there's frustration that's built up.
So now we're talking about dealing with the Americans separately than we're dealing with Mexico, and Mark Carney already said that he's going to try to deal with Mexico differently. That's why he went down there. Does that indicate that perhaps there will be no continued CUSMA? Does that indicate that Canada will perhaps be left out on the vine because Mark Carney's government is being deliberately difficult? If Mark Carney was trying to save these jobs, if Mark Carney was trying to rebuild the economy, would he not be at least pliable in the short term? If he really believes that he's got this plan and that the Americans will change their voting style in 4 years, would he not just take what he can get to keep Canada up and running? Why is it that he's being difficult? Why is it that he's choosing to be difficult? Why is it that the Americans are having a smoother time talking to Mexico than they are talking to Canada? And why is that message not being portrayed to us in Canada? Why are they utilizing all of their media and all of their legislation, Bill C-11 and Bill C-18, to not allow that message to come into this country? What is it that they're trying to hide? I mean, these questions need to be answered. These questions that Canadians need to know, because if they're definitely being difficult on purpose, then obviously it's not Donald Trump, it's Mark Carney. And the events of the last couple of days sure make you wonder, what's up and what's down, no?
Planning to speak with the Prime Minister Carney when they're both in Asia this week, because this ad had nothing to do with Carney's government.
I don't have any information on that.
What it has been so challenging about dealing with Canada in trade negotiations?
I guess the lack of flexibility, and also I would guess that leftover behaviors from like the Trudeau folks that can be very frustrating for people who are negotiating.
So now Mark Carney's people are in the room, not wanting to get along, not wanting to be inclusive, not wanting to do any of the things that they're claiming. They want to throw a tantrum. They want to act like children. See, I told you, we need mature politicians in this country, because as these guys sit here and argue with Donald Trump because they think they're winning some sort of, I don't know what, moral high ground. I'm not even 100% sure. I mean, why would they believe that it's moral high ground to make people go hungry, have no place to live? Like, why is that? Why do they want to turn Canada into the vision of any of 100 countries I can name that have nothing but destitute populations that are struggling to get to the North American continent, that all live inside of these high density areas? Why is it that they're so bent on making Canadians cram into these high rises like you saw in Soviet style Russia, like you see in many of the places that are, considered to be third world, or like you see in China where they build these massive building complexes and cram everybody into it? Why is this what they feel is best for Canadians? Why is this what's stopping them from talking to Donald Trump with dignity and respect? I mean, you come down in the Americas, you bring with you your old liberal policies. And I've told all of you that Donald Trump has no like for the liberal government. No matter what he says was in the room, you can see him when he pats Mark Carney like he's the 10-year-old in the room, when he talks over him and when he doesn't give him any respect. And it's, for me and you, for the people on the ground, what do I care about your ideology about turning the country into a high-density 15-minute city, Mr. Carney? I want cheap food. I want a decent standard of living. I want inexpensive places to live. And the rest of it is all you. You can worry about that when you guys are sitting around drinking wine. Canadians, they elected you for a decent standard of living. So you better put your ideology to the side and hammer out the deal or resign and get out of the way. So it seems to me that the Americans are indicating that the Canadian government is being intentionally frustrating, intentionally difficult. They're stonewalling the Americans. They're not really trying to hammer out a deal. We hear Mark Carney talk about it's a threat. We hear Mark Carney say he's going to go sector by sector. And then we see him run to the arms of Xi Jinping. We see him desperately trying to buy time to make Canadians feel like the only choice that's on the table is China. I mean, China already has police stations in this country. China already has a lot of corruption. I mean, there's enough journalists covering that. We know that the Chinese are hard on anybody that leaves their country. We know that they chase them around the world. Is that really the vision that you have? Is that the kind of thing that you want to get in, to bring into your life? Like, you tell yourself, oh, I'm going to do it because what? Because of the virtue signaling? But really what you're inviting in here is the most abusive relationship you've ever been in your entire life. You're talking about giving the passcode to the security of your building to your ex, the one that chased you around, that stalks you on your phone, the ones that, that's what you're talking about. And I say that to people who might be supportive of the left. I say that to people who think to themselves, well, what's the big deal? Why is it so bad? I'll tell you what's the big deal, is that these countries have been around. I mean, China's had absolute control of its country now for at least 50 years. It does nothing. It's got no improvements. The standard of living of its people are not good. All it does is keep continuing to crack down. Now they got all kinds of problems going on over there. They got, they're having a little bit of an internal struggle. There's purges happening. Actual Chinese soldiers are being deployed into the streets of various cities. Apparently, it's quite the real close to. I mean, there's a possibility that there could be some sort of power grab going on. I haven't fleshed it out completely because it's not something that I should be worrying about. Neither should Mark Carney. Mark Carney shouldn't be standing there beside his enormous jet telling you to live in a cubicle and take a snowboard or take some sort of rollerblades in the dead of winter, never mind the ice. He shouldn't be telling himself, because he's the leader, he has the right to live a lifestyle that you do not, when it's you that gave him that right. He didn't take it by force of arms. He didn't win it in a contest. I mean, I guess we can call the election a contest, but you get my point. It's not a lottery. He came there saying that I will give you the best standard of living, pick me. And now he has a great standard of living, and you and I do not. So if he was being honest and serious, should he not at least feel bad? Should he not at least be worried about these situations? Because I don't see any of that coming out of Mark Carney. I hear Mark Carney laying blame. He blames Donald Trump. He blames Pierre Poilievre. He blames a couple of butterflies that turned left in Malaysia. But in no way, shape, or form has he improved it. He's asking now for more, right? For more, right? It's always something more. It's more. It's wait 10 more years. University students, you won't have any houses, but maybe if you just sit tight 10, 15 more years, we can bring in new people, and their children might definitely, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, benefit from your sacrifices. I mean, that's the kind of country that you want to build. That's the future that you have in your mind when you think about why you would vote a liberal versus conservative. To me, that sounds like the strangest sort of philosophy I could ever imagine. Mark Carney saying that the superpower is somehow Asia, the economic might of Europe, the economic might of Asia. We are the G7 country. I don't know where in his mind that somehow is less economic than the other countries. And if we are a country that's even in the top 20, how come it is that none of these other countries are coming to us and asking us for trade? Why are we going to them? Well, I'll tell you one of the reasons that they're not coming to us is because they're going to the United States of America. But there's something here that doesn't seem right. There's something here that doesn't match. The actions and the words and the behavior do not match what other sources of information are telling us. And we have to consider in our minds what's best for us as a peoples. That's just my opinion. You can let me know what your opinion is down in the comments. I'm going to wrap here. Thank you for listening. I'll talk to you next time.